Hi guys, this is Sam with Samantha Purea Photography. I was recently asked how I was able to create a snowy winter wonderland. Sorry, I get a little tongue-tied. Out of this image that started out very much like this one. This was from a recent engagement session that I had the privilege of working with Hay Bales Photography with. And this beautiful couple here is Rebecca and Jeff. And let me just say, they really wanted something of a wintry wonderland. And they were so cute, I had to try and oblige their request. So here we go. I'm actually going to show you guys how I did this. Now, I can't take the full credit. I did learn quite a few tricks from people in different photography groups that I'm in, as well as lots of tutorials on YouTube mostly from Phlearn. Um, Phlearn is my go-to. If I can find something with them to teach me how to do something, that's where I go. But I was asked to create a tutorial for you guys to show you guys what I did to create the full package. So let's get started. I start out by creating a duplicate layer, and I do that simply. Now I work on a Mac, so you'll probably know your commands better if you're on Windows, but I just hit Command J. Now as you see, we have our duplicate layer, and it's identical to our first layer. It's not a big deal. So I simply go over here to select and go to color range. Now as you can see, it gives you an inverted image of your photograph. And you can adjust this according to how much you want to add, how little you want to add. It's literally up to you. Now, I don't want to turn everything completely covered in snow. I would just like snow-kissed is what I like to call it. So we'll take that back down to about 100. And what it's going to do when I click OK, you're going to see it it's going to select. Sorry guys, this is really my first time doing this, so if I get tongue-tied, just go with it. It's just me. So we're going to click OK. And as you see, like I said, it's going to select a lot of the treetops and things of that nature. Now here's where it gets to be fun. You create a new layer, and it's just a blank layer. It's not a big deal. But we're going to go over here to Edit, Fill, and we're going to fill that with white. We're going to leave the opacity normal, the blend mode normal. You can play with these things however you want to. But look at that. Our trees now have snow on it. But so does the couple. Now they look like they've aged about 40 years. And yeah, I don't think they're going to like that option too much. So I'm going to hit Command D and deselect. And I'm going to add a layer mask. And with this layer mask, I'm just going to brush off. Whoops. Haha, I guess it helps if I have the right brush now, doesn't it? See, nothing goes perfect. So we're going to brush that off of her. Now I'm just using my bracket brush, or my brackets on my keyboard to change the size of my brush here. And I'm just brushing that off of her. And let's brush off of him, because we don't need them overly aged. And it got her boots here too, but I actually kind of want to leave a little bit on her boots because it gives it the effect more if she was traipsing through the snow. So kind of want to leave it down here. So we now have created snow. There's our before, there's our after. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two layers, and I'm going to select Command G and just create a group, and I will go ahead and rename this group to we'll change this to snowy fields. If I could type. So, now here is the fun part. I want to add falling snow to this to give it a complete image. Because, let's face it, you gotta have some falling snow. So now here's where the fun comes in. Now we're gonna make a brush. So I'm just gonna go over here to File, and we're gonna go to New. We're gonna create a new image. Now, all we're doing is creating a brush, so it's going to be pretty simple. I like to go 500 by 500 and make sure it's pixels. You really don't want to do 500 by 500 inches. I don't think that your system's actually going to let you do that. So let's go ahead and open that. Now, this is where it could get pretty fun. I learned this trick from Phlearn, so I hope I am doing them justice when I do this one. I created my own brush, but I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do this, so you have it for your own presets if you ever need it. You just want a couple little snowflakes but don't want to use a full overlay. This is really, really simple. So I just went over here to the elliptical marquee tool, okay, and I grabbed the round one. This is the one that you want, the round. Now, I would recommend adjusting your feather. Let's try it at 20 and kind of see where we're at. And here we go. Now, whenever you're making a brush, let's actually do it a little smaller. Whenever you're making a brush, remember that your brush is actually going to be in black. So we got this little guy here. Now I'm going to hit Command Delete. I think that feather is going to be too much, so let's go ahead and take that down. Let's try maybe just right there and see what that does for us. Okay, go Command Delete. There we go. I think that's going to be alright. So we got this little guy here, and let's make a little one right here. And again, Command Delete. And let's do one bigger guy right here. And again, Command Delete. Now that's going to look like your snowflakes. You can use the feather. You don't have to use the feather. It's up to you. If you want to avoid the feather, you want solid lines, that's not an issue. We can change that too. Let's just take that down to 0. And we'll hit, whoops. Again, I am not perfect, guys. Everything I do is self-taught. So just bear with me. Alright, so we're going to do this little guy here, and we're actually going to do the hard lines here. I'm going to do a little guy up here. And this is just going to create some depth. And you're probably thinking, well, snow is not perfectly round, and I don't see how this is going to come into fruition. Well, it does. I promise you it does. So we have our snowflakes, or what will be our snowflakes. Make sure you deselect, go to Edit, Define Brush Preset. So let's go Sample Snow 1. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our image. Now I'm going to Command plus on my keyboard this in so that we can kind of see what this is going to do. Now if you go to your brushes, the brush that you just created is right here. And if we create a new layer, and you actually can't see it because I have it on black, do it up here. This is what the brush looks like right now. Not very much like snow at all. So if we go over here to window and we open up the brush panel, this is where it's going to get to be fun. Let's go to our shape dynamics and let's take that size jitter all the way up. Let's take that angle jitter all the way up. And you're like, wait, I don't see what it's doing. I promise you, this is going to be just an amazing thing for you. Well, I think it's amazing because, well, I did it. So I was quite proud of myself. You can add that scatter in there. I like to take that all the way up too because I think it does more beneficial work for it. Now, this is where you can change your brush size. It's not that big of a deal. But this is where it really, I think, gets to be the most fun. I like to also up the spacing here because it doesn't need to be all over the place. And as you'll see here in just a sec, whoops, let's take that size down. I don't think we need it that big. See, that is more conducive to what we're looking for. So now we're going to save that as a new brush preset, and this is just going to be falling snow. Okay, so now we have our layer, and you obviously want to make sure that you're using your white brush. Now, here's where it gets to be fun. With snow falling, you need to create depth. So I am going to start out with probably about a size 35 on my brushes here on this layer. And I am just going to, let me grab my Wacom pen. I'm just going to paint on some snow. Remember guys, it doesn't have to be perfect, but remember to pay attention to these little details here in the back, because those are going to be where a lot of people miss an opportunity to create a full story in their art. Now I also like to sneak in here a little bit in the shadows, just where you might catch little snowflakes falling. Now I could spend hours sitting here and getting into all the depth and all these little details, but I'm just kind of going through here a little quick so that you guys can get an idea. Now, you see we have our snow off here in the distance. And you're like, wait a minute, there's got to be more snow closer to them. I'm getting there. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a new layer. And I am going to up the size of my snow. Now I'm going to take it up to about a 90. And again, I'm just using the brackets on my keyboard. And I'm going to go through and paint some bigger snowflakes. And this is just simply okay, I think that looks pretty good. And you can do as much or as little as you want. And I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to create another layer. And I am going to up my size again. Let's go to about a 150. Keep in mind, the closer you get to your camera, the more space those snowflakes take up. The closer they are, the larger they look. So that's what you're doing here, is you're creating that depth to make it look more realistic. Now we're going to take it up again. This is my fourth layer. I like to do about 5 to 6 layers of snow just because it creates a more accurate representation. And I'm going to take this one up to about a 300. And I will be very careful at where I actually place these because I don't want to fill the screen up with them. But all I'm doing is I'm literally just going and tapping on my Wacom and just where I think that larger pieces would be in that area. And I know you're looking at this going, snow does not look round like this. What is it doing? I promise it will make sense. And one more layer, and I think that should pretty much give us what we're looking for. Let's go about a 700. Those will be really super close snowflakes. And I apologize for the emails coming through, guys. I don't know if you guys can hear them or not, but they are starting to drive me wonky. Let me see if I can mute that, if it'll make a difference. I'm just afraid to mute it because I'm afraid that you guys won't hear me. I don't know if it'll work or not. Okay, so I think that's going to be a good representation of the snow. Now here's where it gets to be fun. And I'm going to turn each layer off until we actually go to turn it on. So I'm going to start with the first snow layer. Now I'm going to go over here to filter and I am going to go to blur. Now with each layer you can do different things with the blur. I'm actually going to do motion blur and Gaussian blur on each layer, but they're going to be at different ranges just to give it a more realistic effect of snow falling. So let's start with the motion blur. Well, that, as you can see, already started to blur those, but I don't think they're going to look quite like that as they're falling. I'm not sure I'm happy with that angle as well. So let's do... Yeah, let's try that. And let's change the distance. Think about... Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. That's looking pretty good there. So you see the snow is starting to look like it's falling down. Now I'm going to go back to filter on this same layer and I'm going to add a Gaussian blur. Now obviously you want to be very careful because if you go too high you're going to lose them altogether. Too low and it doesn't make any kind of difference. So let's try about a 6.8. Yeah, I think I like that. That looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks pretty good. In case you're wondering. Yeah, that is looking pretty good there, guys. So now we're going to turn on the next layer. And we're going to go right back into blur, motion blur. And let's change the distance on these a little bit because now they're closer, so it's going to create more of a trail. Okay, let's take it to a 40. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And now we're going to go back and we're going to add the Gaussian blur to this. Now, the 6.8 doesn't quite do it, so let's try to take that up a little bit. 8.9. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now, as you can see, those are starting to create some depth with the snow. Now, if you notice that you get some snowflakes that you're not quite happy with where they're landing, you can always grab your move tool and move the layer around. Or, if you don't want to do that, you just want to remove one, grab your eraser and just erase it off. But I'm pretty happy with where that's at right now. So let's just go back here and we're going to turn on layer 3 of the snow now. And again, we're going to go right back up here into blur, into motion blur. And again, this is going to be a little bit closer, so you want to add a little bit more trail to it. I think that's, I like 49 on this. Yeah, that looks good. And then we're going to go right back into blur, into the Gaussian blur. Now this one came in right at 8.9 again. I kind of like it for this layer. Let's adjust it, just kind of see. Let's go with the 10. I think that how we just had it with the 13.1 was just a little too much. And again, this is my personal preference. You can adjust it however you like. Change it up, add more layers of snow, add more snow. It's all up to you. So as you see here, now we're getting snow that is larger, so now it's getting super close to our camera. So again, here we go. Let's adjust the distance of the trails. I think yeah, I think I like 75 on this one. So I'm going to click OK. Go back into my filters. Go to my Gaussian blur. And let's take this up to like a 16.2. That looks good. Can you guys see the depth starting to create? I think that looks pretty good. And this is our last layer. So let's get this in here. Let's go up to filter, blur, motion blur. And oops. See? This is why live recordings just don't work. I had the same layer that I just worked on. I don't want to do that. You always have to make sure you're on the right layer, guys. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, why isn't it working? And it's just simple as paying attention. Okay, now this one, because this is our last layer, so this is going to be the closest layer of snow to our camera, as if it was actually falling. So keep that in mind. I think we're going to, yeah, I like that. Let's do a 140 on this layer. And I do see this one here. I think we're going to have to either shift the layer or move this one off, because this one's just not making me happy with this one. But let's get the Gaussian blur on there. Oh, see, and now we add the Gaussian, and I don't mind it so much. Just looks like it's falling. Sorry guys, I'm debating how far I want to take this one. Actually, I think the 19 is pretty good. So let me just create another group. And we'll just mark this falling snow. Now, there's your falling snow. And here is your snowy field. See, without the snowy field, that doesn't make much sense. Even though you could actually get away with this. This looks pretty cool on its own. Maybe it's the first snowfall of the year, or however you want to do it. It's, to me, I think it's pretty interesting. I actually kind of like it like this, but I kind of really like that snowy field. However, I do think I want to adjust my opacity on this level just a little bit. I think we could benefit from it coming down some. Maybe not be so... Yeah, I kind of like that. But now, as you see, it's actually changing. This top layer is becoming a little overbearing. So, I'm actually going to adjust my opacity on this one as well. Makes more sense. Yeah, I kind of like that now. It's that simple, guys. It's all it takes to add snow to an image to change a season. I hope you enjoyed, and I would be happy to do more tutorials in the future. Guys, tell me what you want. Thanks.